As we keep an eye on your world this morning, President Donald Trump says his efforts in Ukraine to end the conflict are underway. He said Moscow must make a move and that Ukraine is ready to make a deal.
You said that Ukraine's ready to make a deal. Did President Zelensky tell you that?
Yeah, sure. He's ready to negotiate a deal. He'd like to stop. He's somebody that lost a lot of soldiers, and so did Russia.
The Kremlin seemed to refute that, saying they don't see anything new. Meanwhile, overnight, Ukraine says it hit a Russian oil refinery and targeted Moscow during an attack with a wave of at least 100 drones. But even if that fighting stopped and the almost 3-year war ended today, deadly reminders of Russia's invasion will exist, possibly for generations. That's because Ukraine's government said an area the size of Florida could be littered with landmines. And with us now, live from Ukraine, is journalist Michael Holtz. Michael, thanks so much for being with me this morning.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Michael, you just published a story in the New Yorker about the time you spend actually on the ground following some of these men and women clearing mines, trying to find them too across Ukraine, but you quickly found this is a massive, very dangerous operation. At what moment did that really sink in while you were reporting? I mean, did you have a sense of the scope of this problem before you reported on the issue?
Before I went, of course, I talked to experts, I talked to people who'd been working there for a long time, but it wasn't until my first day out in a minefield that I really got a sense of just the scale of the problem and how dangerous the work is and how long it's going to take to clean all these mines and other unexploded ordnances up. I mean, it's just a massive scale of a problem they're facing there. And like you said earlier, even after the fighting's done, I mean, this is going to be years and years and years before they get everything cleaned up. And there's likely parts of the countries that will remain uninhabitable for decades, if not longer.
I mean, the article really, for me, just exposed how brave these folks are. And one of the teams you followed was led by a 33-year-old former fashion model who'd had about 4 months of training before you were actually watching her clear mines. So how did some of the folks you were with get into this dangerous line of work? What motivated them to do this?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. Some of these people I spent time with when I was reporting this summer. You had the fashion model who was from eastern Ukraine, the Donbass region, which has been in conflict with Russian troops going back to 2014. So for her, it was something very personal. I also met people who, before the war, were working as musicians, IT professionals. There was one guy who'd worked as a nurse before, and I think for them, it's just a way to provide support and give back to their country that's been so, decimated by this ongoing conflict. A lot of these people are from the areas that were occupied by Russian troops that are inundated with these mines. So for them, I think it's very important for them to do what they can to clean up this mess.
What really struck me in your article was one of the deminers, as they're called, trying to potentially uncover a landmine with a trowel. I mean, is that how meticulous this work is? Once they sense there might be one in a certain area, they have to get down on their hands and knees and actually, almost dig away at that area?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but that's one of the tried and true methods. It's been done for a long time now. I didn't write about this in my story, but there's also dogs have been trained to find mines. There's a lot of mechanical assets, they call them, so remote controlled lawnmowers essentially that will go out in areas that are perhaps too dangerous for a human deminer to work in. But even so, I mean, a lot of the work is done manually by people on their hands and knees who are out there trying to uncover a mine, an unexploded rocket, wherever it may be. So it gives you a sense of the danger involved and also just the amount of time it's going to take to deal with all this. I mean, it's millions and millions, not just mines, but artillery shells, rockets, RPGs, all kinds of things that are going to have to be cleaned up after this is over.
I know, too, that huge. Well, first of all, I want to point out to folks who are watching that these landmines in Ukraine have already killed or injured more than 1,000 people, many of them children. I think people need to understand that this is deadly and that they consume, in some cases, huge land masses. We mentioned the size of Florida, for instance. How is this impacting, let's say, farmers and everyday people from trying to restart or rebuild their lives? I know the fighting still continues, but their lives will still be on hold. How so?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. No, I mean, it's a huge issue, and also something that's going to take a lot of time to recover from. I met with farmers in areas that had been occupied by Russian troops in the first year of the war who were able to return to their homes and their cropland. One farmer, he was still waiting for a demining team to come out and clear unexploded submunitions from his sunflower field, which for him was, his primary source of income for him and his family. And I talked to him just last month again, actually, and he was still waiting on that to be done. And so I think a team at NASA had estimated that in 2024, 8% of all Ukrainian cropland lay abandoned, which is just massive. I mean, we think of Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe.
Right.
That's a huge issue, not just to Ukraine, the Ukrainian economy, and these farmers who are out there doing the work, but to Europe and in large parts of the world.
Right. And finally, and I'm going to ask you for a quick answer to this, Donald Trump on the, now President Donald Trump on the campaign trail had promised that he'd, quickly end the war in Ukraine. I think he once said in a matter of 2 days once he took office. Are you getting a sense now that you are there that that might indeed happen? There might be some sort of deal, that anything on the ground there has changed?
No, I think everyone here I've talked to is just waiting to see what happens. He has come out critical of Putin, which I think a lot of Ukrainians are happy to see, but there's also a question about what U.S. support going forward when it comes to military aid will look like. So I think people in Ukraine are really just waiting to see what might happen.
Like they have been for almost 3 years now. All right, Michael Holtz, thank you so much for joining me from Ukraine. Keep up the really important journalism over there, and stay safe.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.